7%. Okay.
Either you or me, and I'm saying it.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. If I could ask the council to stand, and I'll ask Mr. McLaughlin to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to ask Councilwoman Teichholz to lead us in prayer.
Lord, please guide us and assist us and show us the way to make you proud of us in our decisions, especially today. Help us to do the right things for the people we serve and give them the city that they all deserve. Remind us that we are not here for strangers unknown, but we are here for all families, much like our own. Guide our decisions as we try to be fair, with our yeas and our nays being said with your care. Please be the whisper in our ears, telling us right from wrong, and keeping us all close, where our faith will be strong. Amen.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Will the clerk please call the roll?
McMahon. Present. Negushev. Present. Johnson. Present. Trombetta. Calandrino. Perkins. Viscani. Sheeny. Esposito. Sadi. Cabo. Vitello. Diggs. Teichholz. Arconti. Curran. Knapp. Levy. Riley. Seabury. Stanley. 2.
There being 19 present and 2 absent, let the record reflect that both Mr. Trombetta and Mr. Curran are out of town on family business. The first 30 minutes from each council meeting are reserved for public speaking, and I ask any members of the public that wish to address the council this evening, please do so about an item that is specifically on the agenda, and you must be a resident and or taxpayer of the city of Danbury. With that, is there any member of the public that wishes to address the council this evening? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Charles Sotero, and I live at Deer Hill Avenue, lifelong resident of Danbury. I speak tonight to the council regarding 2 department reports that come before you. The first one would be the police department report. I would like to just mention that under traffic enforcement, that there's been a decrease of 218% decrease in traffic enforcement over the same period last year. That would be some 536 traffic enforcements in 1 month that is decreased. Also in the police department, in the month of March, there's a decrease by 30% of the calls for service over the prior year, 2007. My point of bringing this up would be to ask that the police department enforce more of the city ordinances, such as 14-36 of the city ordinance, dealing with parking on sidewalks and over curbs, which is a problem in the city. Oftentimes, the city will go around and replace sidewalks and grass parkways, only to have residents or whoever park over these sidewalks and on this newly planted grass. I think that should be enforced. I'm not sure that they're aware of that. And the second enforcement action I'd like to see more of would be the state law dealing with failure to display front license plates. I brought that to the attention to the police department. And once again, if the enforcement action is down some 200% decrease, I don't see why that there can't be an increase in some of this enforcement action on these other laws that are being broken. The other department that I would, the report I'd like to mention would be the report of the unit The unit report is, in my opinion, rather sparse. I believe it should be interspersed with some statistics of their enforcement action as well. The mayor has seen fit in a very good way to see that the budget for the unit is increased, but we should also be seeing what benefits we're getting from that by statistics for enforcement of the unit. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other member of the public wish to address the council this evening? Mrs. Barrows.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Charlotte Barrows. I live at 55 Hospital Avenue in Danbury. I wrote some comments today so I wouldn't forget what I wanted to say. Yesterday, I received the agenda for today's meeting, and I have some real serious concerns about a request by Dr. Anton Fry to lease a strip of city land that borders on the entrance road to Broadview Middle School. Apparently, the owners of a medical psychiatric practice at 84 Hospital Avenue want to acquire additional parking space and are offering to pay the city $3,300 a year to lease a piece of city land 18 feet by 142 feet. The letter making this request asks that this lease be granted for a period of 3 years so the owners of the facility can recoup their investment. The request also states that the petitioner has tried to purchase other land in the vicinity, but most of the land is zoned multifamily residential, which would not permit a parking lot for the medical building. I believe that the land where this medical facility now exists was originally occupied by a one-family home in the Cady Brothers development, a strictly residential development that was never intended to house a business. It appears that over the past few years, a number of additions have been added to the building. And in 1994, the owners acquired nearly 22,000 square feet of city-owned land to enlarge their business. This entire area is now zoned R3 as a result of a massive zone change in the late 1980s. I'm not sure how this medical facility came to be built here, because it is certainly not in keeping with the rest of this residential area. I think it would be a mistake for the city to lease this land to a private business because with a new ball field adjacent to the land in question, it seems as if the city would want to keep the land for its own use to accommodate additional parking requirements for the ball field or for the school. In addition, the existing heavy traffic in the area and the location at the top of a hill intersected by 3rd Street and the Broadview School driveway would not be a good place to add more traffic. My other concern is that if the petitioner says he would be willing to terminate the lease any time after 3 years, what does he propose to use for parking after that? I looked at the site yesterday and found that there were 27 cars in his parking lot at that particular time. I couldn't help but wonder if this business has become too extensive for its present location. I urge the council to take a closer look at this request to be sure that approving it would not be a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Barrows. Any other member? Mr. Gucker, your hand was up.
Guess I'm getting famous. I don't put my hand up every time. Ken Gucker, 89 Peyton Elm Road. I want to talk briefly on item 20, which is the budget. I believe it's the budget. I don't have the agenda in front of me. Just quickly, I want to talk about the increase that we're proposing here, that all the taxpayers are going to be absorbing over the next number of years. A lot of what's happening in this state, and bear with me, I may get off track a bit. I'll try to stay on track. A lot of what's happening in the state right now is Connecticut is seeing an exodus of people between the ages of 23 and 34 years old because of the high cost of living, high rental, etc., taxes, things of that sort. To where now the state of Connecticut is losing businesses, it's losing tax revenue, and as you've seen with what you've had to work with coming from the state, that you have a lot less to deal with. Our surplus went from I believe it's $157 million down to a deficit of about $67 million. So it gives us less to work with. But what's happening is now the burden is falling on the various towns and the people that live in the towns. Being a small business owner, every day the expenses of doing business in this state are getting higher and higher. Hence, fuel costs that we don't have to talk about. We need to, mortgage our house now to put gasoline in our car, rents, etc. But now we're talking about this increase in our property taxes, dealing with the reassessment of our properties. Once you look at the massive increase that we've had with this assessment, which I believe is going to be phased in the next 4 years, you're looking at my own house. I'm looking at having a tax burden on just my house alone of $100 a week. You add that burden to all the rest of the increases, fuel, etc., health insurance, things of that sort. It's becoming to the point where it's going to be financially impossible for many people to stay in this town, let alone the state, which is going to further the exodus. Once the exodus keeps continuing, we have less tax base, and thus it keeps going on. It's getting to the point where the middle class is no longer going to be here, and we're not going to be able to survive with these continual cost increases. So I know it's probably a little too late for this, but I urge you to look at what these increases are going to do. It's the little bits. I mean, you may think, oh, it's only $100 a week, but that's $400 a month. You add that on top of all the other associated costs that are going up across the board. Connecticut's got one of the highest unemployment rates in the country right now. We're at, I think, 5.3% unemployment. If we keep going at this rate, people are going to have to leave. Your taxes are going to be higher. You can't afford to stay here anymore. So, I mean, in a roundabout way, and I'm sure it sounded much better in my head than it did in your ears right now, but these costs are going to kill the middle class. They are hurting small businesses, and we're going to wind up having to relocate. So please take this in consideration when you look at what these numbers are going to come out to. And thank you for your time.
Mr. Gucker, Ms. Taversack.
Thank you. My name is Lynn Tabersack of 110 Haystown Road in Danbury. And I have some praise and some concerns. I want to praise the council for not politicizing the agency grants in this year's budget, for not punishing the Hispanic Center and the Association of Religious Communities, even though it was suggested that you could, and for really being fair and even-handed with those agencies, in spite of the fact that they expressed a viewpoint that wasn't the viewpoint of this council when it voted to enter into a partnership with ICE. But they were really offering input, and I'm glad that I see that you haven't chosen to single them out. The concern I have is the city's love affair with borrowing, and I'm looking at our total debt service for 2008-2009.
Mrs. Taversack, I'm sorry, but borrowing's not on the agenda.
Is that,
It'll be on next month, so I encourage you to come back.
this is page 305 in the budget. You are adopting the budget, aren't you?
We're not adopting the ordinances. There's nothing in the ordinance, nothing in the proposed things that are on the agenda tonight that have to do with borrowing. It will be on in the June agenda, so if you want to come back and articulate your concerns about that, we welcome you to do that.
Very unusual.
Any other members? Mrs. Basso.
Okay, I'm going to be brief. My name is Pauline Basso. I live at 8 Hoyt Street in Danbury. And good evening to all of you. First of all, on school budget. Since 1996, the school budget side has gone up about $30 million. When I started the council 12 years ago, it was $90 million. This year, I believe it's $121 million. I think we should all stop and step back and look at the figures and the test results. Oh, you know what? I forgot, if you're not on the committee, you don't see the figures. Maybe something should be done to change this. Now, the money for the grants. Now, the grants are not a piggy bank that you shake out every year to see how much money each organization should get. Grants are to help organizations get on their feet so that they can become self-sustaining. 10 years ago, the Portuguese Club needed a little help to get them over a hard time. We gave them a $10,000 grant, and it was only a one-time deal, and they've never come back to us. The Hispanic organization, we have helped for many, many years, and we did such a good job that we were actually paying their mortgage for 2 buildings they now own, and they are worth $1 million for the 2 buildings. I think what they should do is that these organizations should step up to the plate and have their own fundraisers to get them through the tough times that we're all seeing right now. Right now, the Richter House for the Arts needs our help. Maybe we should help them, and it would probably be a one-time thing. Remember, what we should do is to follow what the Bible says. If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for life. My heart does go out to the people of this community that have to sell their homes because the mill rate is still too high. Last week I rode down Locust Avenue and saw 4 homes in a row that were for sale. The prices of these homes have fallen 8% in the last year, but we were all hit with a new high evaluation to our homes this year. Yes, it will be phased in, but it will still be too high for people on a fixed income to afford. And as far as 84, number 17 on the agenda, 84 Hospital Avenue, this is the second time around for this request. It would make more traffic for the people on the street. Last time we voted it down because school property should not be leased, rented, or sold. We also have a shortage there, and I want to thank you all.
Thank you, Mrs. Basso. Anybody else wish to address the council this evening? Mrs. Mitchell?
My name is Margaret Mitchell. I own property on the corner of Main Street and Park Place. I usually come and talk about drainage in downtown, but frankly, the budget is so big, especially the school budget, that I think this would be a good year to postpone. I know eventually you're going to get the drainage done, and you've made a lot of efforts on it, but most of us are pretty overwhelmed by our new assessments and the prospect of the new taxes. And I guess instead of calling ourselves a small business, my husband would call us the Nonprofit Housing Corporation, because we've always given such low rents to people that needed them, because we have a large low-income section of our community in Danbury that really can't afford to pay market rents, and they aren't lucky enough to be on federal programs. So this is going to be a very hard year for our tenants and for ourselves to try to work out how we're going to increase the rents in a fair way that won't harm them and will still allow us to survive. When the assessment first came through, I decided, well, maybe I could just endorse my Social Security check over to Danbury every month. Now, that would work for 1 year. And but I don't think taxpayers can take this year after year after year. And I know that the school budget went up 36% in the last 6 years, because I come to all the ad hocs. And I really hope that in the long run we will get the school district to do some kind of cost cutting or cooperation with the city to reduce costs. I really think it's very necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell. Mrs. Waller, you're next.
Hi, my name is Lynn Waller, 83 Highland Avenue in Danbury. I'm sorry this is kind of jumbled. My neighbor went into the hospital and we spent the day there, so I didn't get to write a whole lot of stuff. But I, too, am addressing number 17. I don't think we should be giving up public lands by either leasing, renting, or selling it. This was up before you a few years ago and was turned down, and it should be turned down again. Cars and kids don't mix, especially on school property. I just think we should be keeping all school property, whether it's a hill, whether it's rocks. I still think we should not be leasing or selling or any of that stuff. The ad hoc committee on grants is number 6. I think it's a wonderful idea. I hope you go through with it this time, but at least get it called. I am against paying $1,233,000 out in the grants. Please find another way to help them get funding, but not out of my tax dollars. And number 24, why can't all these grant agencies go on the Neighborhood Assistance Act? They should be applying there before they ever come to the taxpayer to get money, to see if they're corporations that would help them. I would think that should be the prerequisite of before they come to the city to get any funds. Get them to apply to the Neighborhood Assistance Act, and then if they're turned down, then maybe we should be willing to consider them. But I really would like to see something done there. The fund balance is $22 million before this budget, and after it'll be $19.5 million. Couldn't we use a little more of that to help some of the taxpayers here in town? It really is a tremendous burden. I'm very pleased with the senior tax deferral program that you're bringing forward. Thank you for looking into this program again. Councilman Trombetta, I understand, chairs 3 ad hoc committees on senior issues, but none of them have been called. And I would like to see some of them called, and maybe they could help some of us. The one on number 3 with the security at the airport, I'm concerned about security at the airport if you give out keys to people, if there are too many of them. I don't think it's a horrible idea. Anything is better than helicopters, and I'm proud of the fact that you were able to find a solution, but I just want you to be careful how many keys you give out. I didn't think Charles Ives was supposed to cost us anything, and now I see we will be asked to pay more in the future. Any idea when? Have we received anything from the ice rink that was promised? It's all smoke and mirrors to me. They tell you they're going to pay you something as they make money, but somehow they never make money. So anyway, I want you to be really careful before you enter into too many of these. Thank you very much.
Any other member of the public wish to address the council? Yes, sir.
My name is Carl Sayers. I live at 2 Spruce Mountain, and I operate the Danbury Topsoil Company. My daughter gave me this off the internet. I was in front of the Wetlands Commission a couple of meetings ago. All right, I gave a little presentation of what had happened to me and what went on with this property and everything. This I want an apology for. I don't know who put this together or what, but this is not on the tapes that were recorded at the meeting. They've left out all of the key of evidence, everything else on there. I'd be glad to give this to you. You could even, if you scanned it for just a minute.
You can drop that off the dot here, Carl, but that's not on the agenda tonight. So you have to
well, I want to get to that also. I mean, this is all part of what I've heard mentioned about drainage, airport, and security.
Dot'll take that document you have there. If that's your, if just give it to Dot right here. We'll take it for it.
Start off, the state of Connecticut is putting in a 6-foot pipe, all right, to carry the water off of Lake Wapica, okay, into our airport water system. We have a problem with the beaver on Myrie Brook Road building dams. The city takes the dam out, but they let the mud flow through into the airport brook. Mr. Estefan doesn't clean the brook. The brook is up to this high in a 4-foot pipe. Every time it rains now, everything backs up everywhere. The commission wants me to give them
Mr. Mayor,
wetlands
point of
report.
order.
Aye.
Mr. Sayers has to address an item that's on the agenda. You submitted a document here through the chair to the clerk, and this is not an issue that's on the agenda.
It wouldn't be part of the airport security.
Mr. I'll tell you what.
If the airport's flooded all the time, it's going to get worse, but the big thing is that it needs to be
As for
addressed.
ruling in the chair,
Mr. Sayers, I'm going to have to say that I'm sympathetic to your issues, and we'll certainly meet with you offline to hear them, but you really have to address an item that's specifically on the agenda tonight.
Okay,
So
well, I saw the airport thing there, so I thought that would be related to it.
it's a little bit of a tenuous connection, but we'll happy to have you sit down with some of our department heads to see what we can do. And thank you for coming. I appreciate that. Any other members of the public wish to address the council this evening? Seeing none then, we'll move on to our regular schedule. I have several announcements that I'd like to make to the council before we move on with the actual agenda. As many of you know, on effective April the 15th, we instituted a hiring freeze in the city of Danbury, but sometime around April 2nd or April 3rd, we filled the position of neighborhood coordinator that's been open for several months. And tonight we're joined by our new coordinator. I want to just introduce him to you and let him know that he'll be available to all members of the council for any concerns or issues that you might have. And his name is Sean Stillman. He's right in the back. Sean, stand up, take a bow. Congratulations. And he certainly will be providing detailed reports relating to data and enforcement actions taken by the city. We have had a vacancy in that position now for several months, as the council is well aware. So, Sean, welcome and good luck to you with your career here with the city of Danbury. We also have a number of events that are happening throughout the month. I just want to draw your attention to a couple of them that are key. May 8th is the United Way Community Awards Dinner at the Amber Room. That's always a very interesting night. On May 26th is Memorial Day. There's a change here that I want to make you aware of, and that is that instead of St. Peter's Church at 6:30 a.m., we will be at St. Joseph's Church at 6:30 a.m. So for those of you that like to go to the service and then travel for the laying of the wreaths, we'll start at 6:30 St. Joseph's. For the rest of us, excuse me, I always go with that, but for the rest of you, I'm looking at Colleen, and I know she does. Anyways, placing of the wreaths takes place roughly between 7 and about 9, and then the Memorial Day Parade will step off promptly at 9:30 a.m. Right at the corner there of Main Street and Rose Street. So please be there probably a little earlier than 9:30. Get there about 10 after 9 or so, because it is difficult with traffic to get in there. In addition to that, on May 28th is Lebanon American Day in the city. We have an 11 a.m. flag raising that we do here at City Hall each and every year. We invite the council to attend that. And then a noon luncheon at the Lebanon American Club. I think we can accommodate folks that show up, correct, Mr. Sadi? We'll figure it out. So if you want to stick around for lunch, you're certainly welcome to do that. And in addition to that, there are other items that are on the agenda or on the calendar, and the mayor's office is always certainly happy to help you out in terms of what time to be there and what events are going on. We also have a couple other key announcements I just want to make. One is that May 18th to the 24th marks National Public Works Day, or the Let's Celebrate Antonio Iadrola Day. He's been driving me nuts to make this announcement tonight, just want to let you know. But Antonio and his management team, along with our office, are scheduled May 16th to be Public Works Awareness and Employee Recognition Day for the Public Works Department. There will be activities that are associated with the various divisions of the Public Works Department. We will have our heavy equipment and truck fleet parked out front. Children certainly can, with adults, can sort of check out the equipment, much like we do with our fire engines. And that event will go on from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Throughout the day. So I want to congratulate Antonio for putting the Antonio Iadrola Week together, but also for recognizing all the great employees of our Public Works Department. Item 2 is that Antonio has also been selected as coordinator of the Public Works Departments for the Housatonic Valley towns. This is certainly an honor and a testament to his expertise and knowledge as it relates to public improvements and public work operations. And he's also responsible for helping along with the Connecticut Department of Emergency Management, Homeland Security issues, and all of those things as they interrelate together with the Housatonic Valley region, which is a 10-town region. So, Antonio, congratulations on your appointment, and best of luck to you. Last but not least, June 1st is Portuguese Day in the city. That's a parade, for those of you that are new to the council, that starts off with Mass at, actually a flag raising at 8:15 at John Perry Memorial, which is down in Rogers Park. From there we go to a 9 a.m. Mass at Immaculate Heart of Mary Church, which is next door here to City Hall. And at 10:15 the parade steps off right here on Deer Hill and heads down West Street, celebration at Portuguese Square. And then there's dinner, dancing, and food over at the Portuguese Cultural Center. So it's a fantastic day. We certainly invite the council to join us, and I'll be calling around to remind you on the 1st of June that it's going on. With that, oh, and also we have Fred Visconti's birthday. Is it today, Freddie? Congratulations. Congratulations, Fred. Any comments?
It's a great way to celebrate a birthday.
You poor soul.
My wife said hello, too, you know.
If she's watching at home, we certainly want to say thank you to her.
Taking you out at midnight.
We hope you get a nice dinner tomorrow night. With that, we'll move on with our agenda. Mr. President, the minutes, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I'd like to make a motion that we waive the reading of the minutes as all members have copies, and copies are on file in the city clerk's office.
Motion is made and seconded by Mr. Perkins. Is there any deletions, corrections, or additions to the minutes as presented? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds. All those in favor of acceptance of the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Majority Leader, the consent calendar, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I read, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Visconti on his 88th birthday.
Oh.
88.
Don't worry, Freddie. I had to do that, Fred. We're going to give you some payback. Don't worry. Never mind. Save your ammo.
All right, here we go. Consent calendar, May 6, 2008. Number 2, receive the communication and confirm the appointments of Warren W. Platts and Janet Hardner as member of the Terrywell Park Authority with terms to expire January 1st, 2011. Number 4, receive the communication, refer to a public hearing. Number 12, receive the communication and approve the transfer of $30,000 into the Fire Department Special Service account 2010.5052 due to ongoing events. Number 13, receive the communication and refer to public hearing. 14, receive the communication, refer to public hearing. 15, receive the communication, refer to public hearing. 16, receive the communication, refer to public hearing. 18, receive the communication, refer to engineering and planning for reports. 19, receive the communication, refer to engineering and planning for reports. Excuse me. 22, receive the communication, adopt the resolution to authorize the Danbury WIC office to sign an agreement with the State Department of Agriculture for $712 for the Farmers Market Coupon Program. 23, receive the communication and adopt the resolution to authorize Mayor Mark D. Boughton or Scott Leroy to accept additional funding from the State of Connecticut Department of Public Health for the WIC program. 24, receive the communication, refer to public hearing. 26, receive the communication, adopt the resolution to authorize Mayor Mark D. Boughton or Scott Leroy to accept additional funding from the State of Connecticut Department of Public Health for continuing development of the new school-based health center site at Rogers Park Middle School. And finally, 27, receive the communication, adopt the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. What's your pleasure, Council? Councilman Teicholz?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent calendar as presented.
Second. Motion was made and seconded by Mr. Visconti. Any discussion related to the consent calendar? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, item 1, please.
Communication, appointment, Danbury Police Department. Dear council members, I hereby submit for your confirmation the appointment of the following individual to the position of police officer. Mr. Hector Rodriguez of 150th Avenue in Kew Gardens Hills, New York. Mr. Rodriguez served in the United States Army and was stationed at Fort Wainwright, Alaska for 4 years as a combat engineer, earning the rank of Specialist E4, and attended the University of Alaska during his service. Mr. Rodriguez has been a police officer for the past 3.5 years with the New York City Police Department. Thank you for the consideration of Mr. Rodriguez's appointment. Sincerely, Mark D. Boughton, Mayor.
What's your pleasure, Council? Councilman Arcani?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to receive the communication and submit for confirmation the appointment of Mr. Hector Rodriguez for the position of police officer.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Seabury. Any discussion about Mr. Rodriguez's appointment? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Hector, congratulations. I know you're in the back of the room. Stand up, take a bow. I know that I speak on behalf of the entire council when we wish you all the best in your new career, and we stand ready to assist you in any way so that you can climb the career ladder with the Danbury Police Department. Congratulations. Look forward to working with you. Thank you. Madam Clerk, item 2 is consent. Item 3, please.
Communication Berkeley Holding Corporation.
What's your pleasure, Council? Councilman Riley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to send item number 3 to an ad hoc committee consisting of airport administrator, representative from the mayor's office, corporate counsel, and representatives from the Berkeley Holdings Corporation. Thank you.
Ad hoc committee shall consist of the following: Councilman Calandrino, Councilman Curran, and the birthday boy, Councilman Visconti.
Good present.
Another night out. Yes, Mr. We'll add in a report from the Planning Commission as well, Mr. Levy. Point well taken. Item 4 with consent. Item 5, please.
Communication Charles Ives Authority, Property Acquisition.
What's your pleasure, Council? Councilman Calandrino.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to refer this over to an ad hoc committee to consist of a rep from the mayor's office, director of finance, corporation counsel, and a representative from Ives.
And we'll add the planning report as well. Ad hoc committee shall consist of the following: Councilman Knapp, Councilwoman Diggs, and Councilman Rotello. Madam Clerk, item 6, please.
Communication Grant Agency Review Committee.
What's your pleasure, Council? Councilman Knapp?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to refer this to an ad hoc committee consisting of the Director of Welfare, Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services, Director of Finance, Corporation Counsel, and a representative of the Mayor's Office.
Ad hoc committee will be a leadership ad hoc committee, and that'll consist of the following: Councilman Cavo, Councilman Seabury, Councilwoman Teicholz, Councilman Sadi, and Councilman Esposito. Madam Clerk, item 7, please.
Communication Donations to the Danbury Library. Dear Mayor Bowden, the Danbury Library has received a donation from Wayne Curtis Pride, 55 Mill Plain Road, Danbury, Connecticut, in the amount of $20. We have also received the following donations in memory of Nicholas Mohasi, Edward and Catherine Helleback of Darrell Road in the amount of $25, Judith Benson from Frederick, Maryland in the amount of $35, Laura McLaughlin from New Milford in the amount of $30, Thomas and Paula Valuso from 5 Stonegate Court in the amount of $25, Nola Falcone from NMF Asset Management from Martinez, Georgia in the amount of $100, Roland Case from East Lansing, Michigan in the amount of $50, Dr. Richard Beck of West Street of Danbury in the amount of $36, Marilee and Robert Caulfield's Art Auction from Woodstock, Connecticut in the amount of $50, Carolyn and Thomas Haddock from Dearling, Georgia in the amount of $75, Laura Eisenberg, 10 Grandview Lane, New Milford in the amount of $25, Melba and Robert Fato, 601 Reading Ridge, West Reading in the amount of $25. Please place these items on the agenda for the May Common Council meeting, as these donations need to be deposited in the library fund, .4651 donations. Sincerely, Mark P. Hascarl, Library Director.
It's your pleasure, Council. Councilman Negusha.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to receive the communication and accept the donations and deposit into library fund .4651 donations and send appropriate letters of thanks.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Councilman McMahon. Any discussion about the donation? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, item 8, please.
Communication donation to the Danbury Library in memory of Betty Jane Hull. Dear Mayor Boughton, the Danbury Library has received a donation from Valerie Portney, VSK Advertising Incorporated, from Pissarro Terrace of North Potomac, Maryland, in memory of Betty Jane Hull, in the amount of $15. and one from the Women's Club of Danbury, New Fairfield Incorporated, in the amount of $200. Please place these items on the agenda for the May Common Council meeting, as these donations need to be deposited into the Library Fund .4651 donations. Sincerely, Mark P. Hoskarl, Library Director.
What's your pleasure, Council? Councilman Negushev.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to receive the communication and accept the donations and deposit them into the Library Fund .4651 donations and send appropriate letters of thanks.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Councilwoman McMahon. Is there any discussion about the donation? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, item 9, please.
Communication, donation of a tree to the Danbury Town Park. Dear Mayor Boughton and members of the council, the New Fairfield and Danbury Women's Clubs have donated a Green Mountain maple tree to mark the 25th anniversary of their organizations. We would like to plant this tree at Candlewood Town Park. The approximate value of the tree is $75. I request that this generous donation be accepted at the next meeting of the Common Council. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me directly. Sincerely, Antonio Idarola, Director of Public Works.
It's your pleasure, Council. Councilman Johnson?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to move to receive the communication, accept this generous donation of the Green Mountain maple, and send the appropriate letter of thanks.
Motion's been made and seconded by Councilman Negushev. Is there any discussion about the donation? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, signify by saying nay. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, item 10, please.
Communication, donation, generator and trailer, Public Utilities Department. Dear Mayor Boughton and members of the council, WCI Communities, who is developing the old Union Carbide property, purchased a 100,000-watt generator in order to operate a large water tank while permanent CMP power was installed. WCI has offered to donate this generator and trailer to the Public Utilities Department. The generator and trailer can be used in emergency situation when power is lost. I am requesting that this generator and trailer be accepted at the next Common Council meeting. The value of the generator and trailer is approximately $45,000. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me directly. Sincerely, Antonia Idarola, Director of Public Works.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to move to receive this communication and accept the donation of the generator and trailer and send the appropriate letter of thanks.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Cavo. Is there any discussion about the donation? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds. All those in favor, please signify. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Visconti.
Thank you, Your Honor. I looked at this during the week, and I meant to call Anthony about it, but I just didn't get a chance. I'm just wondering the legal status of this. Can we do this without setting any kind of a precedent with the WCI communities, developers or so on? Is there a problem with that?
Since they've been giving us about $10 million over the last 4 years, no, but perhaps Mr. Idola just wanted to give us just an overview of the condition of the generator, if that's okay, Mr. Visconti, just kind of give us an overview of the donation.
Sure. WCI was in a very interesting predicament. They had made a bunch of sales. CLMP, unfortunately, did not bring permanent power to this tank. So this piece of equipment was designed and purchased and was intended to run the water tank and all of the auxiliary equipment associated with a water tank. So they felt it was appropriate to donate it to us. Should we ever have an issue with the operation of this water tank, we could really bring this generator up there and keep the system up and running. And I think that's what the purpose of their donation was.
Follow up, please.
Sure, Mr. Visconti.
Then the actual use of this type of this is a specially designed generator?
It is a generator that is specifically set up right now to operate the water tank and all of the auxiliary systems for the water tank.
So basically, the purpose would be to run in the water tank.
The water tank. I believe we can actually use the generator in some of our other facilities. We have to take a look at it once it's actually accepted and once we accept the donation, we'll take a look at how it's wired and see if we can use it for some of our other facilities.
Follow up? Sure. For the Corporation Council, are we in our legal bounds of accepting something like this from a corporation?
You spoke of precedent, Mr. Visconti, the council. There is precedent on the Common Council for acceptance of donations like this one. Every time you accept a donation from a developer, you could have some concerns on the part of people about, well, how nice will they be treated? But so long as the council is aware of the donation, aware of who's donating it, and recognizes that any WCI or any other developer that comes in is not going to receive any favorable treatment. But the direct answer to your question is there's nothing in the charter that prohibits the council from accepting a donation under these circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Visconti. Any other discussion? Mr. Sadi.
Thank you, Your Honor. I didn't have a concern about this until Mr. Visconti brought up some questions, and through you to Corporation Counsel or to the Director of Public Works. My question is that if we accept this donation, I read it as a general donation to the city, and then we would have authority over this generator to use it when power is lost in emergency situations. Would we have an obligation through the chair to provide WCI communities with energy source from this generator first before we, let's say, use it for something else that we thought more important? Or can we use it at our discretion?
Mr. Idarola? I think you'd probably be better. Antonio would be better suited.
The use of the generator will be exclusive to our discretion. It is not specifically, the acceptance of this generator doesn't mean that it gets first use at the WCI communities.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds on the donation. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, item 11, please.
Communication donation for National Public Works Week. Dear Mayor Boughton, members of the council, on May 16, 2008, in conjunction with National Public Works Week, the management team and I will have the first annual Public Works Awareness and Employee Recognition Day. It will be held between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. at the Public Works Complex at 53 Newtown Road. It is a day when we will have an open house, showcase our equipment, recognize the employees, and most importantly, provide an educational opportunity regarding the various divisions and the tasks they perform within the Public Works Department. There will be several grammar school and preschool students who will be attending the event. There are several organizations, consulting firms, vendors, and a civic organization who want to provide food and soda for this event. Attached is a list of these sponsors. I request that these generous donations are accepted at the next meeting of the Common Council. In addition, I will personally be donating T-shirts to each employee in celebration and recognition of all the hard work that my employees perform all year. My secretary will also be donating some event stickers. I would also ask that you accept these donations. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call me directly. Sincerely, Antonio Idarola, Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. What's your pleasure, counsel? Mr. Calandrino.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I'd like to receive the communication and accept the donations from the sponsoring organizations to include Hawley Construction, O&G, Data Group, Rizzo, United Alarm, Reliable Excavating, David Plateau, Moose Large, TRC, H.A. Harris, Childscapes Custom Care Services, Auto Corporation, Fryer Associates, Viola, VHB, Dorothea Garla Stasny, McKinney Mechanical, Barrett Roofing and Supply, and Antonio Idarola, and send out many letters of thanks.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Arcani. And any discussion about all things Idarola Day? Any discussion about these donations? Seeing none, then I'll try our minds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, signify by saying nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Antonio, just want to congratulate you on coming up with a really neat idea and a great way to celebrate the successes that you've had, but also to recognize our employees that work very hard every day of the year. So, good job.
Had it go.
Madam Clerk, item 12, I believe 13, 14, 15 were consent. 16 was on consent. Item 17, please.
Communications lease for 84 Hospital Avenue. Dear Mayor Boughton, thank you for taking the opportunity to talk to me about this matter the other day.
Sorry.
Sorry. What's your pleasure, counsel? Mr. Sadi?
Your Honor, I'd like to refer this to an ad hoc committee to include the Director of Public Works, Corporation Counsel, and a report from the Planning Commission.
Ad hoc committee shall consist of the following: Councilman Knapp, Councilman Seabury, and Councilman Shinisi. Items 18 and 19 were consent. Madam Clerk, item 20, please.
Ordinance and resolution. An ordinance making appropriations for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2008 and ending June 30th, 2009. And a resolution levying the property tax for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2008 and ending June 30th, 2009. A, General Government 1 Budget Report. B, General Government 2 Budget Report. C, Education Budget Report. D, Public Works Budget Report. E, Health and Housing, Public Safety, Welfare and Social Services Budget Report. F, Grant Agency Budget Report.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we begin this portion, I just want to, I have to change what the committee. Mr. Shinisi has notified me as a conflict, so I'm going to appoint the birthday boy, Mr. Visconti, to spend another night.
Happy birthday.
This isn't my wake, it's my birthday.
So just a note for the record, Madam Clerk, Mr. Shinisi has been replaced with Mr. Visconti. Okay. Sorry to interrupt. What's your pleasure, counsel? Mr. Calvo.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I would like to make a motion that we receive the communication, adopt the ordinance and the attached resolution levying the property tax rate for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2008 and ending June 30th, 2009.
Motion's been made and seconded by Mr. Seabury. At this time, we'll begin the reading of the committee reports. And if you could just stand down for a second. The first committee, I believe, is General Government 1, and that would be Mr. Seabury, the chair.
Thank you, Your Honor. The General Government 1 Committee meeting was called to order on April 22nd, 2008 at 7:45 p.m. by Councilman Greg Seabury, chair. Committee members, Councilman Arconti, Councilman Cavo, Councilman Perkins, and Councilman Sadi were present. Also in attendance were Mayor Mark D. Boughton, David St. Hilaire, Director of Finance, Dan Garrick, Assistant Director of Finance, Paul Estevan, Airport Administrator, Robert Yaman, Corporation Counsel, Lavio Pinter, Deputy Corporation Counsel, Sean Herity, Director of Permit Coordination, Mike Sofrenic, Assistant Airport Administrator, Dennis Elpern, Director of Planning, and Lori Kabak, Town Clerk, Mark Hascarl, Library Director. Ex officio members, Councilman Chinisi, Councilwoman Teichel, Councilman Levy, Councilwoman Diggs, Councilman Rotella, and members of the public were also present. Director of Finance David St. Hilaire gave an overview of the narrative. He discussed the evaluation of historical expenses and his goal to obtain tight control of overtime expenses. Common Council staffing was discussed. Ordinances, there was no discussion. The Mayor's Office salaries were discussed. Annual report, there's no discussion. The Mayor's Discretionary Fund, no discussion. City memberships, any allocation would be brought before the Council. City Clerk's Office, no discussion. Probate Court, operation of the Probate Court by state mandate and Lazarus fees were discussed. Registrars and elections, rental, real estate, storage for equipment printing and binding, and part-time salaries were discussed. Corporation Counsel, professional services, litigation, special and hourly rates were discussed. Town Clerk, the salary of the Town Clerk and printing and binding were discussed. Permit coordination, the Customer Service Manager job duties were discussed. Planning Department, overtime salaries and legal notices expenses were discussed. Office of Economic Development, the office equipment line item was discussed. Danbury Conservation Commission, there was no discussion. Fair Rent Commission, there was no discussion. The Lake Authority, Mayor Boughton stated for the record the number is derived as a portion in relation to the 3 other communities, and that Danbury opposed the increase but was outvoted. The Danbury Public Library, outside services were discussed. The Long Ridge Library, there was no discussion. Airport, part-time salaries, motor fuel and heating oil costs, and airport revenues were discussed. Hart, no discussion. Councilman Cosmo moved to accept the general government budget, Councilman Cosmo moved to accept the general government 1 budget as presented, along with adding a 3.5% to the 2009-2010 budget year for salaries in the voter registrar's office, line item 1060.5020. The second by Councilman Arconti. Discussion followed by Councilman Sadi requesting clarification for the record that the 3.5% tracks the other elected officials for January 1, 2010. Councilman Calvo, Sadi, and Arconti voted in favor. Councilwoman Perkins abstained. The motion passed with a majority vote. Respectively submitted, Greg Seabury, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Seabury. What's your pleasure, council, on the... Mr. Cabo?
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the Government 1 budget report as presented.
Made and seconded by Mr. Negushev. Discussion under General Government 1. Mr. Sadi.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to clarify for the record, the way the minutes read, it leaves an impression that the final vote was just for the amendment, but that there was actually another vote to adopt the budget as proposed by the committee. I just want to make sure it's noted for the record. And I believe that it was the same
That
vote.
is correct. The same vote.
Same vote.
Yes. That is noted for the record. Other discussion related to General Government 1. Seeing none, then I'll try your minds on adopting General Government 1. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, signify by saying nay. For the negatives, just raise your hand so we can record you appropriately. Mr. Levy and Mr. Rotella and Mr. Perkins are in the negative. Okay. At this time, we'll move to General Government 2. Ms. Teicholz, your report, please.
General Government 2 Budget, Monday, April 21st, 2008. Chairperson Mary Teicholz called the meeting to order at 7 o'clock p.m. in the caucus room, 3rd floor, Danbury City Hall. Present were committee members Phil Curran, James Johnson, Warren Levy, and Charles Trombetta. Also attending were David St. Hilaire, Director of Finance, Virginia Alaska Warner, Personnel Director, Daniel Jowdy, Treasurer, ex officio council members Joseph Cavo, Louise McMahon, Colleen Stanley, Dwayne Perkins, Fred Visconti, Ben Chianese, Paul Rotello, and members of the public. Chairperson Teicholz stated the purpose of the meeting was to review the general government departments for the budget and asked the finance director to speak about each. The director of finance, Mr. St. Hilaire, started with finance and said that the department is fully staffed, so regular salaries are up, but that most of the numbers are in line with last year. Independent audit is a little up, but is in line with contractual obligations. Retirement administration needs additional funds due to anticipated retirements. City treasurer is in line with last year and reflects the salary change. Data processing, some expenditure from town clerk and assessor will be transferred into the IT budget, and those departments will show corresponding reductions. 311 and T3, in-house web hosting, has seen significant increases for communication services. Leased equipment has gone up and is based upon a lease schedule to replace computers periodically. Maintenance office equipment and furniture has increased due to software and equipment changes. Mr. Trombetta asked how the amount originally requested was reduced to the currently proposed amount, and Mr. St. Hilaire said the amount was deferred to another year. Mr. Perkins asked what percentage is for the 311 line. Mr. St. Hilaire said it is $80K. Assessor, the drop in this department will be reflected in the increase to the data processing IT budget. Assessment appeals is a little less than last year. There will be no reval next year. Tax collector has a change due to the cost associated with the collection of delinquent taxes by an outside service, which has been very successful in bringing in revenue for the city. Purchasing budget is flat with last year. Personnel, civil service. Professional services have gone up, and there's a slight increase in salaries. We now have a full acting personnel director with an increase in responsibilities and salary, and the finance director has a decreased salary with reduced responsibility. This results in a $10K net savings. Labor negotiation. We expect $75K to be sufficient for this year. FICA is based on salaries. Pension expenses has been dropping due to the performance of our portfolio. Employment service benefit contains sick leave payouts, longevity payouts, and DEMA contract amounts. Workers' compensation is expected to be about $600K. State employment compensation is flat. Employee health and life insurance, we're controlling the growth of the cost, so the result will be 8% to 10% instead of 15%. Union welfare benefit and contributions is a calculation of their salaries.
Second, Mary.
Risk management amounts are about the same as last year. Interest on debt for the schools and the city collectively is going up due to the bond issues over the last few years. They are all fixed items. Contingency is for the items of uncertainty. Capital, $2.5 million in notes for 5 separate projects. Low SIP is for the annual items such as sidewalk repair, boilers, traffic items, etc. There was much discussion about the capital items. Questions were asked about the patrol vehicle replacement, school technology, Richter House, and the enterprise fund. Councilman Johnson moved to accept the General Government 2 budget as presented by the mayor, seconded by Councilman Curran. The motion passed 4 yes, 0 nay, 1 abstention, with Councilman Levy abstaining. Mr. Johnson moved to adjourn at 8:20, seconded by Mr. Curran. Motion passed unanimously. Respectfully submitted, Mary Teicholz, chairperson.
Thank you, Mrs. Teicholz. What's your pleasure, council? Mr. Calandrino?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to accept the report by the committee and approve the budget as presented.
It's been made and seconded by Mr. Johnson. Discussion under General Government 2. Mr. Shinisi.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a question on the pension expense in this report, so my question is going to be to the finance director. Recently, I've been reading in a lot of articles regarding many pension funds, and with the market doing so poorly, that many of these pension funds are being negatively affected in terms of millions of dollars. You reported here that there's a drop in the pension expense due to the performance of our portfolio, which basically means our portfolio is doing very well. What type of reaction would you have if the portfolio goes down substantially, and how would you make up that difference in this current year budget?
There are several factors that go into what kind of expense would be hitting into the budget for the current year. The first quarter was a tough quarter for everybody across the board. We had our advisors in here yesterday going through it. April and May has been much better for us. We recovered quite a bit from the first quarter. And so we don't know how we're going to do for the year, but things are looking much better. I expect that the numbers that we're provided are provided from our actuary. And these cyclical things are taken into account, when they do their projections. So the projections I put in the budget are based upon those things. Do I expect those numbers? And I'm giving numbers a couple years out. So I have the numbers for next year already. Do I expect those numbers to change? Yes. So the number that I put in for this year is still going to be intact. But the number that they have provided me for the next year budget, I'm talking about the 09-010, I expect that number to change based upon this year's performance. All right? Because what they're using is, are things like, retirements, people that have passed away, other things that play into this. So it's not just the performance of the portfolio. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Mr. Shinichi. Further discussion on General Government 2? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds on accepting the report for General Government 2. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposition signify by saying nay. And if you could just follow that with a hand raising so we record your vote appropriately. That would be Mr. Perkins, Mr. Rotella, and Mr. Levy in the negative. Education budget. Mrs. Stanley.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Welcome, Councilwoman.
Education budget meeting, April 23rd, 2008. Chairperson Colleen Stanley called the meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. in caucus room, 3rd floor, City Hall. In attendance were committee members Mike Pellegrino, Jane Diggs, and Robert Riley. Fred Visconti was absent due to illness. Also present was the Director of Finance, David St. Hilaire, the Assistant Director of Finance, Dan Garrick, Board of Education Finance Director, Elio Longo, Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Sal Pasquarella, Board of Education members, Joe Scazzafava, Richard Gianelli, Richard Irving Fox, Kathy Molinaro, Eileen Alberts, Michael McLaughlin, representing the Mayor's Office, and ex officio council members, Paul Rotello, Greg Seabury, Louise McMahon, Mary Teicholz, Ben Chianese, Joe Cavo, and members of the public. Chairperson Stanley noted that this meeting was part 2 of the Education Budget Committee and read into the record the minutes of the first meeting from April 16, 2008. In attendance at the first meeting were committee members Mike Pellegrino, Jane Diggs, Robert Riley, Fred Visconti. Also in attendance were council members Mary Teicholz, Paul Rotello, Warren Levy, Mayor Mark Boughton, and members of the public. During the first meeting, Dr. Pasquarello and Elio Longo were away for spring break, and Finance Director St. Hilaire was at a family function, so Mayor Boughton gave a brief history of the budget process. Chairperson Stanley stated that the first meeting was a workshop to propose questions that would be submitted to the board for answers at the next meeting. The mayor stated an issue that the council should be aware of. The Honeywell lease will need to be addressed since the city side of the budget is not prepared to absorb the cost. The board presented a budget of over $114 million, which was a 7.83% increase. The finance department and mayor reduced the budget to approximately $111 million, a reduction of $3.5 million off the board's request. Chairperson Stanley began the second meeting by asking Mr. Longo to answer questions that came up during the previous meeting. Council members questioned contractual obligations, special education, magnet school currently running at a loss, the increase in budget, the excess of special students, increase in salaries, workmen's compensation, Social Security, increased phone usage, bulk buying, Head Start, integrated technology, increase in salaries for teachers, average 5.79% compared to city employees who received 3%. Lights at high school fields remaining on at night and day, and the cost. Council members spoke about the need to conserve in tough economic times. The school side of the budget has really never taken a hit, as the city side of the budget has for the last several years. Council President Cavo once again encouraged the school system to find ways to cut, specifically combining departments like purchasing and IT with the city departments and offering retirement packages. Finance Director St. Hilaire reminded the members that the difference between the board's request and the mayor's proposed budget after bonding works out to be $1.5 million on a $112 million budget. The mayor's budget does not cut services to students, and that's still a $5.8 million increase. Councilperson Riley moved to adopt the mayor's proposed budget of education budget, or proposed Board of Education budget, with the stipulation that the $500,000 Honeywell lease be paid by the Board of Education during the 2008-2009 school year, seconded by Councilperson Diggs. The motion passed unanimously. Ms. Diggs moved to adjourn the meeting at 7:25 p.m., seconded by Councilman Riley. The motion passed unanimously. Respectfully submitted, Colleen Stanley, chairperson.
It's your pleasure, counsel, on the education report. Mr. Negashov.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to accept the educational budget report as presented.
Motion made and seconded by Councilman Johnson. Discussion under the education report. We'll start with Mr. Calandrino.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, as part of the committee, I mentioned during the committee meetings that I felt that this proposed budget was a business-as-usual budget in a critical time. I still feel that way. I know that with what's going on with the economy, both federal economy, state, and everything filters down to the cities, I don't believe we can continue to sustain these kinds of percentages on a yearly basis. And while I very, very reluctantly will support this, I can honestly say that, and with some certainty, I don't think I'll do this again next year. However, during that meeting, there were several recommendations and suggestions made that I think are good ones and may produce some savings to us during the year. One was, and I think it was following your lead, a very aggressive review during the year with the objective of finding savings during the year. That was your initiative. Another initiative was that they put together a plan, and I think it was mentioned earlier, to allow retirements by those school personnel that are eligible to do so. That could save us 1 ton of money. The third suggestion was made that we consolidate the procurement department and IT services, that together with the school and the city, could also save us some money. And I think the fourth was a good point, would be to get a listing of all school personnel that do not reside in Danbury, but have their children in our schools. And I know that's been asked for a number of times, and I would really like to have this council, along with the mayor's office, follow up on these recommendations so that we can measure if there's any productivity during the year. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Your Honor.
Again, Mr. Callender, I just want to add to your remarks this one comment, that part of what has to happen with the Board of Ed and the education infrastructure is there has to be a change in the culture. And sometimes that change in culture takes a while to realize savings. But I agree with your comment that we cannot sustain this level of spending from year to year. So I think your point on. Mr. Perkins, your hand really was up before anybody else. Sorry, Mr. Sadi.
Thank you, Honor. I wasn't able to attend that meeting, but I did circulate a couple of questions that I had, and it seems like there's one here. I guess my question through the chair is, how come there isn't any narrative for these questions that were posed by those people at that committee meeting, like there were in some of the other budget meetings?
Well, I think the, just to respond to you, Mr. Perkins, what you see, the reports are a reflection of minutes, and minutes are a reflection of actions taken and motion made at a particular meeting. They're not a line-by-line transcript of who said what. The tape is available if you want to listen to it. I did forward your specific questions to the superintendent. I'm not sure if I was not at this meeting, Mr. McLaughlin was, but I'm sure he must have addressed them through that. But you're more than welcome to listen to the tape or to call Dr. Pasquale in the morning and say, hey, what's going on with my questions?
Thank you, Your Honor. Typically, though, the information that appears here in writing kind of gives a tone to people who weren't at the meeting in order to figure out things that were discussed and things like that. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Mr. Shinisi.
Again, thank you, Your Honor. Again, through the chair, I just want to echo some of the comments that Councilman Calogino mentioned. I do agree with everything that was said. But one of the things that also needs to be addressed as well, again, is the salaries. I think it was mentioned here in the report on the average 5.79%, but basically 82% of the school budget is made up of salaries and benefits. But what needs, and the mayor brought this up, the mindset is the administration salaries probably make up 25 to 30% of the 82%. So the mindset of the education is being more funding from the top down instead of funding our classrooms. And that's what education is all about, funding our classrooms, not necessarily funding the administration of the education. And that seriously needs to be addressed. We've got to start focusing on our classrooms and not focusing on the administration. So I just need to add that as well as part of the comments. One of the other things I'd like to bring up, that I was at the first workshop, and that was not in the budget report. It wasn't mentioned here. But I think this question, again, it refers to Corporation Council, so I get a clearly understanding about this Honeywell lease. I think we were bouncing back and forth as who is ultimately responsible to pay this lease. I know it was mentioned here that it's not in our budget to pay for it, but I guess there's talk that we're liable for this lease, so we should be paying for this lease, not the school. So can you please give a clarification?
You recently approved a lease for the schools for some other equipment, I think it was last month. According to the requirements of the borrowing law in the state of Connecticut, the Common Council, as the entity, the political subdivision with jurisdiction, has to, as you did, has to approve these kinds of borrowings. So you're ultimately responsible. However, the school district, if it's arranged that way through contract or other arrangement, will have to pay for it if the council so directs that arrangement. So the answer is that the city is ultimately responsible as the approving authority.
Since we fund them, it's our money anyways, Councilman, so whether it comes from them or us, we're funding. I think your frustration, and it's been echoed by me and all the members of the council, is that if the council were informed that there would be a $500,000 lease payment each and every year for this equipment, perhaps we would look at a different or alternate funding mechanism, potentially bond. There's a whole different ways in which you can go about doing that, which in the long run would probably be more cost efficient. And that's the frustration that we all experience. And I think that in the ad hoc committee, the report is pretty clear that this responsibility is on the Board of Ed. And Mr. Longo and Dr. Pasquarella are well aware of that.
Follow up. So it's my understanding then that this Honeywell lease is in their school budget to be paid by them, so they're not going to somehow put it on our tab, so to speak.
If they did not, when their request came through, they made some assumptions. They said, we need 7.83%, and in addition to that, Mayor, you're going to have to fund the Honeywell lease and fund the maintenance side of that contract, which is another $270,000. When I met with them, so really the request, and what I'm driving at is the request wasn't 7.83%. It really was much higher than that, because you had to add in another $800,000 for these extraneous costs that they were trying to push over onto the city. I said to them at our final meeting, look, I'm not budgeting for this. I'm not putting this in the budget because we just can't absorb this kind of cost. You all are going to have to go back to your blackboard and figure out where you're going to find the dollars for this. I think the council's action at the report made it clear that they're going to be responsible for paying that $500,000. That is their responsibility, and we certainly won't be paying for it out of our side of the budget.
So their response would be, again, to follow up, would be that they will assume this liability and find somewhere in the budget to pay for it?
Right. I mean, we're recommending a $5.8 million disbursement to them, but they're going to have to opt out. $500,000 is going to have to go and pay for this lease. So they really will have $5.3 million of new operational dollars. You follow? The mayor's budget says $5.8 million. The committee said deduct $500,000 because you're paying this lease. So they're really only, the real net to them is $5.3 million.
So that, again,
it's really a cut to their budget.
But that's what I'm getting at. So would that be in form of a motion that needs to be made this evening?
It's already in the report. If the report is adopted by 14 votes, then it would be the result. And if the budget is adopted by 14 votes, that'll be a result. If the budget is not adopted on the final question by 14 votes, then the mayor's numbers are the default numbers, which means that $500,000 is still in limbo, although I've been clear to them to say, I'm not budgeting for it, we just can't afford it this year. So that may be a further discussion later on in the fiscal year about how do we fund this GE payment. So that's kind of where we're at.
I may have more questions later, but I'll just let other people.
Didn't mean to confuse them, Mr. Shinisi. Mr. Sadi.
Thank you, Your Honor. In following up on the issue of the Honeywell lease, just to be clear, even if this doesn't get 14 votes, this report or the budget at the end, that the city is not going to assume this $500,000 as part of our budget. Because it's not budgeted for.
I think your interpretation is correct. I can't stop the board from coming back and asking for a supplemental appropriation. It means you can reject it, but, you know.
Okay. And then just to follow up, not a question, but just a general concern. I think while the city side of this budget has been lean, in spite of increased energy costs and the increases due to fixed costs of contractual obligations, I haven't seen the Board of Ed exercise that level of approach with regard to their budgeting. We have teachers and students who deal with old equipment while administrative oversight costs increase, salaries increase. We cannot, as a council, so people know this, change line items. We can only vote for a block of money at the bottom. We tried in the past one time to have the Board of Ed, have the administration buy new books with a particular amount of money. And once we voted for the budget, they didn't do that. With that in mind, and I cannot vote for this block of funding because I don't agree with the approach, and I agree with the many concerns that have been raised. This is not about funding students and teachers. This is about administrative costs that are excessive, I think, and that more money should go down, not even trickle down, but flood down to our classrooms. So I'll be voting against this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sadi. Coming around the corner, Mr. Levy, and then Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really had a concern. I did attend the meeting, and I asked the question where the Board of Education was and where all the members of the senior executive staff were. And I was told it was a workshop meeting, the first meeting, and I'm reading in this report now that they were away on summer vacation or something. When you're the CEO of a corporation, you're on call 24/7. When your upper management and the budget occurs every year at the same time, I think it's really a slap in the face of the taxpayers of the city of Danbury who devote the lion's share of this budget to education for them to go on summer break. I think they could have changed your schedules, as any CEO of any major corporation would, and been there to explain or what their expenses were. Pretty upset over that, and I'm pretty upset over the fact that the kids are not getting the funding that we're setting aside for them. That funding is staying right at top management, and this year they have a $750,000 deficit, and I understand they're having an emergency finance meeting to try to close that delta, along with the fact that all of the management took an unbudgeted increase in wages this year during the by action of the Board of Education. So I think we have to send the message loud and clear. Certainly on deficits, I once before in my history had Dina Diorio read them what the state statutes calls for, and that is that when you go over budget, there's a personal obligation on the individuals to make that deficit up. So I would hope that they're not going to come before this council looking to cover their $750,000 deficit.
I think you can count on that one. Mr. Riley.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. If I might, two comments. First, that was a very difficult meeting that we had. It always is. This is my 5th year on the council, and needless to say, it's very difficult even for somebody like myself that was an administrator within the Danbury school system. But they're difficult. The point that I saw that I would just relate this to you was that they gave one of the documents that they gave us was a 12-year history of the historical budgetary increases that they received over a period of 12 years. The lows were 3%, the high was 6.1. So then the mean is 4.5. And basically when we were struggling with the budget, and when I made the motion, I felt that what the mayor had come in with, I think, was around 5.5 or a little bit more, I'm not sure. I felt that they really needed to take that $500,000 and take responsibility for it, because ultimately what would happen was they would come in with approximately, after the $500,000, as I understood it, around 5.23, maybe 5.30. So, which would be, it would, in the line of the 12 years, it would come in about the 4th highest over 12 years. So it was not very close to 3 and the highest going up, but it came in about 4th, maybe a little bit around the 5th. But the point is, I thought that it was fairly good regarding what they needed and what we were willing to give. And so that the mean and what we are going to ultimately give them, it's pretty close. Okay, that's number one. And number two is that I would make a recommendation. I appreciate all your comments, but one of the recommendations, if we could ever do it, would be that we would be able to take a look at all those principals. See, the principals get their budget about a month before, because needless to say, for each school you do your budget. And we were told, when you do your budget, make sure that you're right on target. In other words, we don't inflate the budget at our prospective school. Okay, so it's a tight budget from the school, okay, the 11 elementary, 2 middle school, etc. And then when it goes up the line, things happen. So my recommendation would be, if we could ever work out a system where we might be able to get a copy of each one of those reports from each independent principal, that might help us immensely down the road to better ascertain what is really the dollar amount that you need. Because when you look at that budget, it's convoluted. I mean, I don't think it's done intentionally, but the average layperson that's not a CPA, all due respect to my peer, it's very difficult to understand. And I mean, I went through it for 8 hours and I still was banging my head like this, and so it's very difficult. So that would be a recommendation, and I thank you for allowing me to make those comments.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Further discussion about the school budget. Mr. Visconti.
Thank you, Your Honor. I unfortunately could not make the second meeting. I did have quite a few questions, but I just want to say that I agree with the comments that have been made. I, too, would have a very hard time to vote in favor of this type of a budget. And I have a question.
with all due respect to my colleagues, Mr. Riley and Mr. Seabury, whether they should have a vote on the Board of Education budget.
Yeah, I think, Fred, we discussed this, and as long as neither individual is benefiting personally from the passage of the appropriation, then there's no conflict. For example, suppose we were voting on a teacher's contract. Then Mr. Seabury would have to recuse himself. Mr. Riley wouldn't have to because he's in the state teacher's retirement pension and he's living large off all that money that he gets every month. So, so in that sense, there really would be a conflict. Just like you would vote on you could really technically vote on a fire. Well, you couldn't because the fire contract impacts retirees, right? Yeah. So, in that sense, you couldn't. But if it were a contract or something more driven down to teachers, then Mr. Seabury would have to recuse himself. Otherwise, there's no conflict voting in this particular venue. Okay. Any other discussion? I just want to add one comment to all the folks that have spoken tonight. It is very frustrating that we only are allowed to present a block of money. And certainly we've discussed getting greater control over the finances. If the council there were consensus to at least look at that issue, perhaps we can come in with an ad hoc next month to study that. There are cities and towns in Connecticut that have merged the finance departments with the school in the city, and of course they need a few more staff to do it. But the objective would be to cash in on all the economies of scales and really understand where the money's being spent. But if that's something that interests this council, we certainly can look at that over the summer as we move forward. Mr. Seabury.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a question for you, frankly, a clarification on my own part. Motions have been made and seconded on this, and this, when Councilman Riley in the committee meeting moved to adopt the mayor's proposed Board of Education budget with the stipulation that the $500,000 Honeywell lease be paid by the Board of Ed during the 2008-2009 school year. My question, sir, is this. Should this be defeated now, or should we not get a significant number of votes to pass this? Then, if the budget passes, the entire budget passes, can you explain to me what would happen to that lease in the whole scheme of things?
Well, I think it would make it murky. I think, and I would encourage the members of the council to support the budget report only because it's very clear what the expectation would be for the $500,000 of Honeywell lease. If the report were rejected, for example, tonight, it would be murky as to what would happen with that money. I could very well see them coming in with another request. Doesn't mean we would grant it to them, but they would come in with a request later in the year saying we need an extra $500,000 to pay this. But I think when we talk about making statements, it's not everything we want. It's not perfect, but it certainly sends a message to the Board of Ed and to the superintendent that, look, you're going to have to tighten your belt just as we're tightening our belts over on the city side. And so I think it's a nice way to do that. If you reject the report, it does get a little murky. As Mr. Sinisi has aptly pointed out, somebody's on the hook somewhere for that, and I think there'll be a little bit of argument back and forth with the superintendent and myself. So my preference is that we adopt the report as presented. Okay.
My colleagues on the council right here, there's a lot of questions that came up tonight, and I just wanted to be noted that unless I'm missing somebody, I don't see anybody from the Board of Ed here that could have answered that. Is that correct?
I haven't seen anybody.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Duly noted, Mr. Seabury. Any other discussion? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds on adopting the Board of Ed budget. All those in favor of adoption, please signify by saying aye. All those in the negative, please signify by saying nay. Could the nays please raise their hand? It would be Mrs. McMahon in the negative, Mr. Perkins in the negative, Mr. Visconti in the negative, Mr. Sinisi in the negative, Mr. Esposito in the negative, Mr. Sadi, Mr. Rotella, Mrs. Diggs, and Mr. Levy. Okay, now can we count them up there, Doc? 9 negative, there being 10 is 19. So that'd be 10 yeses, 10-9. So the budget is adopted. No, let me just make a clarification. Thank you, Mr. Rotella. The budget passed 10-9, but we're not having to amend the budget related to the Honeywell lease because I didn't program it there. So we just simply made a statement that it's going to be the Board of Ed's responsibility to pay for the Honeywell lease. So we don't have to meet the 14-vote requirement because there's no line item in the budget that reflects the Honeywell lease. Okay? All right. Just want to make sure we're clear as to what the legislative intent is here. Okay, we have public safety, public works, I believe, next.
Public Works.
And that would be Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Public Works Committee meeting was called to order on April 24th, 2008 at 6:06 p.m. by Councilman Johnson, Chair. Committee members, Councilman Jay Nagashat, Councilman Curran, Councilman Calandrino, and Councilman Rotello entered at 6:25 p.m. were also present. Also in attendance were Mayor Mark D. Boughton, David St. Hilaire, Director of Finance, Antonio Idarola, Director of Public Works, Sandy Moy, Executive Director of Cherrywell Park, Nick DePlanis, Director of Recreation. Ex officio members, Councilman Cabo, Councilwoman Stanley, Councilman Seabury, Councilman Levy, Councilwoman Diggs, Councilwoman McMahon, Councilman Tykold, and members of the public were also present. Councilman Arconti entered at 7:20 p.m. Director of Finance, David St. Hilaire, turned the discussion to the Director of Public Works, Antonio Idarola. Mr. Idarola gave a brief recap of the reorganization of the Public Works Department last year. The Construction Services Division was created to bring outside services in-house. The Public Works Administration was created from employees from other departments. He gave an overview of the soft savings on some of the past year's building projects. Mr. St. Hilaire stated that 2 lead park maintainers have been added and that Public Works bears to a large extent the utility cost increases the city has been experiencing. Public buildings, no discussion. City Hall building, no discussion. Library building, no discussion. Police station building, maintenance of building and structure were discussed. Senior Center building, no discussion, or library building. Heating fuel cost estimates and cleaning services were discussed. Park buildings, cleaning was discussed. Director of Public Works, positions and salaries were extracted from the highway and engineering departments for the new department. Professional services were discussed. Highway, overtime salaries, leased equipment, curbs and sidewalks, anticipated reduction in state funding, and sidewalk maintenance were discussed. State aid highway project, no discussion. Snow and ice removal. The shortfall carried down from state cuts and magic salt were discussed. Street lighting, maintenance, responses from CLMP regarding repairs and utility costs for street lights were discussed. Park maintenance and forestry. Discussion regarding the extraction of the forestry department from park maintenance department. Forestry, establishment of new department. 2 new positions to allow for maintenance of greenways and proportional funding from Parks Maintenance Department were discussed. Public buildings, maintenance and repair. Honeywell contract and systems and outside services were discussed. Equipment maintenance, no discussion. Recycling, solid waste, outside services were discussed. Engineering. The reorganization, engineering positions, and professional services were discussed. Construction services, extraction from positions from other department or new department was discussed. Sewer fund, indirect revenue was discussed. Water fund, seasonal water usage, water levels, pending orders from DEP, and nitrogen credits were discussed. Recreation department, part-time ranger positions, fee structure, and concession lease at Danbury Town Park were discussed. Cherrywell Park Authority, Jerry Daly, Chair of the Cherrywell Park Authority, spoke regarding additional requests for the park. Sandy Moy, Executive Director, read and discussed a list of additional budget requests. Mayor Boughton indicated that there may be some funding available for only the capital side of the request. Revenue from the rentals of the facility were discussed. Cultural Commission, no discussion. Lake Kenosha Commission, no discussion. Ives Center for Performing Arts, funding, seasonal programming, outside services, funding for director salary, and transitional costs were discussed. Danbury Museum Authority, transition funds and revenues were discussed. Councilman Calandrino moved to accept the budget as presented, seconded by Shay Nagashat. Motion approved by unanimous vote.
Councilman Kern moved to adjourn at 8:15 p.m., second by Councilman Calandrino. Motion approved, unanimous vote. Respectfully submitted, James Johnson, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's your pleasure, Council, on Public Works? Mr. Seabury.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd move to accept the recommendation of the committee and to accept the proposed budget.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Riley. Discussion under Public Works. We'll start with Mr. Sadi.
Thank you, Your Honor. While I think the Director of Public Works has done a great job in the Public Works Department in this report, I agree with generally. However, there's sort of a non-Public Works issue that I've taken issue with since it came up initially, is the Ives Center and municipal funding for that. My comments and concerns are well known and on the record before this council and other meetings, and as such, I would like to move at this time that we remove the funding for the Ives Center and transfer that to the fund balance.
Motion is made and seconded by Mr. Sadi, seconded by Mr. Shinisi, related to the Ives Center Authority to strike their funding and transfer it to fund balance. Discussion of the amendment to the department report. Mr. Shinisi.
Again, through the chair. When this was first presented to the council, it was presented as a self-funding entity after the initial funding. It was my understanding that the initial request was for $75,000 to buy the assets and $25,000 as seed money to get the entity on its way, to get it moving. That the new authority was not to assume any of the debt from the old authority, and I think, I'm not sure, but I think some of that debt was maybe could have been paid. But then going forward, that no additional funding was to be made to the authority. Now, I know last budget we gave $50,000 last year, which is $25,000 over what we said we were going to do, and now $80,000 is being funded to pay for a director, is the way I read it here. And that's not what the presentation from the prior finance director, Dina DiOrio, presented to us when she gave us this 5-year plan. So I feel as a councilman that I was misled, and I supported the Ives Center 100%. I think it was needed for the city, but some truths are not being known, and I can't support continually giving money without having some feedback of what's really going on in the Ives Center. It was my understanding that it had a very successful year this past year. So did it make money? Did it lose money? We don't know, but apparently it must have lost money because we're giving additional money to the Ives Center. So I can't support giving $80,000 without having any type of knowledge of what's really going on. So I'm going to have to agree with the amendment and have the $80,000 removed. I think at some point in time they could come back once a formal presentation has been given to this council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shinisi. Any other discussion related to the Ives Center? Seeing none, then Mr. Cabo, and then Mr. Rotella.
Thank you, Your Honor. With all due respect to my colleague, Mr. Chinese, and I can't be clear about this, but I do remember there was some discussion at the time when this Ives Authority, the creation of the Ives Authority was presented to us, and I do recall that several times it was mentioned that this was the initial request. There may be a point or time where they may come back and ask or need more money to help get themselves off the ground. And I'm not really sure whether that discussion happened here on the dais or if it happened offline, but I do know that there was discussion, and I was aware that there was a possibility that we were going to need to fund this a few years in to get the authority off the ground. So I will be supporting the budget as presented without the amendment, and I'm hoping that the Ives Authority turn out to be a tremendous asset here to the city, as it already started out with a great year. I'm hoping this year will be even better, and we'll move on from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cabo. Mr. Rotella, your hand was up.
Thanks, Your Honor. Without taking a particular position on the genesis of the Ives Center, or whether $80,000 is appropriate at this time or not, or whether we should have seen this coming, or whether it was presented to us as a possibility or not last year, I would like to know what would happen if we deleted that fund. What would happen to the operation of the Ives Center? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rotella. If we delete the funding, frankly, we're just not going to have a season. I mean, that's the bottom line. This is seed money that is used to seed the authority. It's not necessarily the salary of the director. She has a fundraising goal that she has to meet, and this by no means is a very small part of their overall budget. And to editorialize just very quickly, this council gave $75,000 to a film festival for 3 days worth of entertainment without batting an eyelash. We're talking about $80,000 that'll impact, except for Mr. Levy. He batted twice and then got a little twitchy on top of it. This authority will impact 25,000 to 30,000 people this summer over really an entire summer. So when you look at your value for the dollar and your impact on the community, there's really, no comparison. But the net result will be that there frankly won't be a season. And Mr. Shinisi is right. Look, we certainly want to wean them off of any city funding. That's ultimately the goal. And this money is being transferred over from the YMCA, who also was on a 3-year program to get them up and running. They drop from $180,000 now to $100,000. Actually, there was a change in grants, so they're even a little bit less than that, because we're going to begin to wean them off of their city funding. So that's really ultimately the goal of what we're trying to do. So there's not a net impact, an increase to the budget from last year on this. But basically, that's going to be the result. Further discussion? Seeing no other discussion, I will try your minds on the amendment. All those in favor of stripping the Ives Authority of their $80,000? I got to say what it is. And kick the puppy and don't walk never mind. Don't walk anybody across the street. I'm sorry, Councilman, that was wrong. All those in favor of the amendment defunding the Ives Authority, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, that's Mr. Shinisi and Mr. Sadi are in favor, and Mr. Visconti, that's 3, and opposed to beating up puppies and taking the Ives Authority money away, signify by saying nay. All right, that would be the balance, I think. Any abstentions? Okay. I'm sorry. Further discussion under Public Works. Mr. Shinisi.
Thank you again. Through the chair, again, just want to reiterate what Councilman Sadi is doing. I think the Public Works Director is doing a great job in the department, in the way he's managing it, and with the different departments that he set up. But one of my pet peeves last year, again, is overtime salaries. So I'm going to ask the Public Works Director again, is adequate funding for overtime, is it in this budget, in your opinion? Because I know last year we were short quite a bit.
We've had discussions, mostly our overtime is driven by weather-related incidents. We had not only a bunch of snowstorms, some ice storms, which seem to be more typical than snowstorms, but we've also been experiencing during the spring and summer some of these heavy wind and rain events, which impact our regular overtime. So we project out, we trend out 3 to 5 years. The numbers that you see in front of you are those trends. And as long as the weather doesn't really create havoc on us, we should be fine. We've worked really hard with our finance director to really do these trends and really take a look at our projections and incorporate the salary increases into those trends. So I feel these numbers should definitely be sufficient for anything that may come down the road. But then again, could easily be made a liar.
Again, I have one more other question.
Yep.
Again, with the Danbury Museum Authority, again, this year we took them off of 501c3 and actually made them an authority. And one of the reasons why I went with approving making an authority was to help them reduce costs. One of the things that they were able to do is use our buying power to help them reduce the utility costs, which should hopefully reduce their overall operations. So last year's budget, I think they got like $35,000, which was increased this year to $95,000. So that was a substantial increase. So I guess my question would be through the mayor, because I don't see the anybody here from the authority to say why would they need such an increase when they should have a decrease in other areas that should be enough to cover for any maintenance that they should need to do. So I don't understand why they would need an increase from us.
Thank you. Their total request as an authority was approximately $110,000. I reduced them with the assumption of some savings in some of those areas that you pointed to, $95,000. They do a significant amount of fundraising also on their own. Their budget is not $95,000. We knew, unlike the Ives Center, where there's an opportunity to generate a significant amount of revenue through ticket sales and T-shirts and things like that, that the Museum Authority really doesn't have those same access to be able to generate the revenue that they need. Based on my discussions with the executive director, $95,000 was the approximate, although she says it's a little bit less than what they need, but they'll make it work, approximate amount of money that they're coming up short each year. If you remember during the discussions of creating the authority, our concern was that if the Museum Historical Society 501c3 collapses, we own all those buildings that are out there. They're on each one of the deeds, which means we'll have to go in at a much higher expense, reorganize them, clean them, set them up, and try to develop some kind of way of showing those buildings off and celebrating the history of Danbury. So that's really where that figure is derived from. Bridget will tell you it's probably about $15,000 too low. I said, I'm sorry, that's the best we're going to be able to do this year. It is a $30,000 increase over their prior, $60,000 increase, I think, over their prior things. But remember, we own that, that authority now is pretty much part of the city's assets. I'll also tell you that I did encourage her to continue to generate revenue and raise revenue, particularly through the gift shop, which tends to do very well around the holiday season. So they've got some ideas about how to do that. Are we ever going to get them weaned off? Unlike the Ives Center, I don't foresee us a time when we'll never be supplementing their operations out there. I just don't see it, because of how many people they handle each year. I know that was long-winded. I'm sorry.
I'd like to follow up with that. Given the past that we've had with the Richter Park Authority, and there's a lack of communication between that authority and this council, I don't want to start setting trends with other authorities to saying they not have accountability to this council. And I would think that we need to send a strong message to all our authorities, and if I need to put this to an ad hoc or make an informal motion at the next meeting, I will do that. The authorities must be accountable to this council, and they need to start giving reports, whether it be a monthly report or a quarterly report. We need to know what's going on, and we shouldn't have to go beg them for financial statements or requests for data. We should get that voluntarily, so we know what's going on, that we know that the museum is actually funding the building adequately, because we don't know. It'd be too late when the roofs start collapsing and falling in that we start getting involved, and then it's too late. We need to know now where they're spending their money, that we can look at their expenditures and make sure that it's being applied correctly, and also, again, using our resources to assist them. I know Rick Palazzo does a great job with the buildings here, but I think his department needs to start getting involved with them to make sure that their buildings are up to code, that then they are being properly maintained, because if we don't follow up on them, no one will. And it'll be too late when the roofs start collapsing. That would be a much bigger dime to do it, and we should do it now. So, I mean, I just needed to say that we need to start making these authorities accountable, because we can't keep throwing good money into something that's not going to be worthwhile. Thank you.
I sense the councilman's frustration, but let me just say, the statutes allow you to create authorities specifically because they're not accountable to us. That's the whole point, is that they're an independent operating authority. To the extent that we're not there to oversee and manage their daily operations, otherwise we might as well make them a city department, and then they'll have full accounting and reportability. However, having said that, there's certainly no reason why a quarterly report, say 4 times a year, couldn't be provided to the council, giving an overview of the operations, revenue generated, expenditures, that kind of thing. But we do not manage the internal expenditures, nor do we prioritize their operations of their facility. That's done by the boards that we appoint. Certainly I think we can strike a balance there to give a little more feedback to the council, particularly when we're funding them, to give them some feedback about how money's spent, where it's spent, maybe on a quarterly basis. I'll talk to the executive directors about doing that, and we'll include that either in a mailer or just in your council packet once a quarter. We can do that for you. Okay. Further discussions? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds on acceptance of the Public Works budget. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Negatives, please signify by saying nay. And if you could raise your hand, I'd appreciate it. That would be Mr. Perkins, Mr. Shinisi, Mr. Sadi, and Mr. Levy. Health, Housing, Public Safety, and Social Services. That would be Mr. Councilwoman Diggs.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Health, Housing, Public Safety, and Social Services Committee meeting was called to order on April 22nd, 2008 at 7:30 p.m. by Councilman Charles Trombetta, Chair. Committee members Councilwoman Diggs, Councilman Knapp, Councilwoman McMahon, and Councilman Esposito were also present. Also in attendance were Mayor Mark D. Boughton, David St. Hilaire, Director of Finance, Dan Garrett, Assistant Director of Finance, Paul Estevan, Airport Administrator, Scott Leroy, Director of Health, Deputy Chief Terrence Shanahan, Chief Alan Baker, Captain Thomas Wendell, Chief Jeffrey Harold, and Pat Waldron, Director of Veterans Advisory. Ex officio members Councilman Cabo, Councilwoman Stanley, Councilman Seabury, Councilman Levy, Councilman Visconti, Councilwoman Teichels, and members of the public were also present. Councilman Arconti entered the meeting at 7:20 p.m. Director of Finance David St. Hilaire gave an overview of the narratives. He discussed the evaluation of historical. Sorry about that. David St. Hilaire gave an overview of the narratives. He discussed the evaluation of historical expenses and his goal to obtain tight control of overtime expenses. Police Department. The proposed budget was reviewed. Special services, leased equipment, new vehicle leases, the Public Safety Board, workers' comp were also discussed. Assistant Finance Director Dan Garrett provided some clarifications to the workers' comp, stating that a safety and health awareness programs have been established in an attempt to reduce claims. Chief Baker thanked the Common Council for their generosity to the police department. He also thanked the mayor for initiating the construction project for the new police station. Animal control, no discussion. Fire department, the proposed budget was reviewed. Overtime, training courses, training requirements, professional services, leased equipment, maintaining building structures, Engine 24, clothing and dry goods, grants, communication equipment, public safety, equipment and Worcester and Citizens Homes companies were also discussed. Chief Harold discussed his commitment, maintain quality of service while reducing expenses. Building inspector, no discussion. Department of Civil Preparedness, no discussion. Department of Consumer Protection, no discussion. Unified Neighborhood Inspection Team, no discussion. Health, Housing, and Welfare, no discussion. Veterans Advisory Center, flag purchases and caseload were discussed. Commission on Aging, no discussion. Elderly Transportation, no discussion. Ambulance, no discussion. Councilman Knapp moved to accept the budget as presented. Second by Councilwoman McMahon. Motion passed by unanimous vote. Councilman Knapp moved to adjourn at 7:31 p.m. Second by Councilwoman McMahon. Motion passed by unanimous vote. Respectfully submitted, Dorothy Goyer Stanley, Recording Secretary.
Thank you, Councilwoman. What's your pleasure, Councilman Teichels?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to receive the report and accept the budget as presented.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Johnson. Discussion under Health, Housing, Welfare, Public Safety. Any discussion? Nobody wants to bother the chief tonight, huh? Okay. Seeing none, then I'll try your minds on acceptance of the report. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Mr. Levy, Mr. Rotella, and Mr. Perkins in the negative. Got that down?
I'm trying to stay consistent.
You're doing well.
Grant agencies. chaired by Mr. Riley.
Your Honor, if you would forgive me, I have a wicked back problem. No, seriously, it's a little back problem.
Sounds like a workman's comp claim to me, but go ahead, Mr. Riley. Feel free.
Your Honor, it was all those 33, 34 years bending over the desk with a little...
Tough job. Been there, done that.
Okay. Here we go. It's a long one. The April 23rd, 2008 meeting of the Common Council Ad Hoc Committee for Grant Agencies was called to order by Chairman Robert Riley at 7:30 p.m. Present were committee members Joe Cabo, Ben Chinese, Jack Knapp Jr., Robert Riley, and Greg Seaberg. Also present were Finance Director David St. Hilaire, Assistant Finance Director Daniel Garrick, and Common Council members Robert O'Conti, Mike Caladrino, Jane Diggs, Louise McMahon, Paul Rotello, Colleen Stanley, and Mary Teichel. Chairman Riley said that they would review